Have you ever noticed the presence of multilingual signs in certain suburbs with a diverse cultural population, maybe even the language used in shops and restaurants? If you haven't, they're there, and this is what Linguistic Landscape is about. Linguistic landscape is the various languages seen throughout a specific area in the form of signboards, restaurants, menus, and more. It is indication of other cultures living in the area. This is especially prominent in suburbs with a high migrant population. Australia has a high number of migrant communities, particularly in larger cities like Sydney. One of these suburbs is Chatswood. Chatswood is a highly multicultural area in the North Shore region of Sydney. Located 10 kilometers outside of the CBD, it is a major place for living, shopping, and socializing. With a major train station located here, it is very accessible to visit as well as to travel to other surrounding areas, making it a great place to live and work. It has two major shopping centers, Westfield and Chatswood Chase, as well as various other small centers like Lemon Grove and the Mandarin Center that attract many locals and other Sydney-siders. With culture being a large aspect of the suburb, there is constantly annual festivals and events occurring in the main areas of Chatswood. Every year, the Chinese New Year's is celebrated in a big way. Hundreds of people crowd to see the dancing dragon and other performances occurring throughout the day. Chatswood is also known for getting popular Chinese artists to come sing and put on dance routines for local fans, like Crayon Pop, a group of 5 Asian girls who came to Westfield, Chatswood to perform their song Bar Bar Bar. Some major festivals that occur is the Willoughby Spring Festival, which is the second largest in Sydney and is intended as a testimony to a modern, multicultural, and prosperous Chatswood. Vivid Sydney, an annual outdoor lighting festival with immersive light installations and projections in Sydney, also has a place in Chatswood, lighting up the Willoughby Theatre Company, a theater which specializes in musical performances and brings the community together on many different levels. Chatswood is home to 20,967 people, with roughly an even amount of males and females. Out of the large number of residents, only 13,889 of them are Australian citizens, the rest being of different background, and only 11,009 residents are eligible to vote in the various elections. Chatswood houses 7,757 Australian-born citizens, and the other percentage of people are a combination of various cultures, mainly Asian. 11,113 people speak a language other than English in their homes, which is about half the population. This shows that Chatswood has a huge and diverse selection of residents. Some of the most prevalent languages that are vividly seen and heard throughout Chatswood is Mandarin, Cantonese, Korean, Japanese, and Indonesian. English still makes up the majority of the language spoken, but the combined percentage of the other languages make up about half the population, which is very high when compared to other surrounding areas. The main point to gather from this census data is that the Chinese population, specifically the Mandarin-speaking portion of the population, has a huge and overwhelming presence in the Chatswood area. Customers you typically work with?
Mainly Chinese, a lot of Chinese, but then Chinese would be like the one looking for property, looking to rent, looking to buy, whereas the Westerner they're looking to sell.
Do you think Chinese people are the main cultural background up here, and is that like one of the main languages spoken?
Yes. Well, we do have a lot of the Westerners customers. Probably it's like 70 Chinese racial versus Western, like 30.
Oh, really?
Do most of them speak Chinese, or
do you mean the customers?
Yeah,
they do. It's a mix. The Chinese do speak English as well, but I would say about 50% who comes in would actually speak Chinese.
Okay. Besides Chinese, do you think there is another culture that has much of, besides Chinese and Westerners, do you think there's another culture that kind of has visibility in Chatswood? Big presence then.
Yeah,
Maybe
there's a
that
big presence of like, well, Australia is so multicultural. So other than Chinese, I would say Malaysian and Indonesian, there are quite a lot of them as well.
They speak other languages? Or was
well,
that mainly English?
Chinese and English. Yeah, English has been the dominant one.
Do you live in Chatswood?
No, I live in Marunga. Yeah, so no.
Okay. What is the largest cultural background you've noticed is in Chatswood?
Asian, especially Chinese.
Okay. Is that one of the top languages spoken here as well, you think?
Yeah, maybe Mandarin
Okay.
and Cantonese. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
People have lived here for the whole of Chatswood, or has this changed recently?
It's changed recently. Yeah.
So, did Chinese people not normally used to live here?
No,
like for you,
maybe 20 years ago, it's not like this. Last 10 years, I think the Asian population is growing in this area. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Grabe ka talaga ngayon. There you are. 590. Tama. Tama.
Do you live around the Chatswood?
Yes, I live in Roseville, next to Chatswood.
Okay. What do you think the most common background of Chatswood is?
I think most of them are in Asian.
Asian culture?
Asian, most of them Chinese, Korean, yeah,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay. What is your background, may I ask?
Philippines,
Philippines,
from Philippines,
okay.
yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
How long have you lived here for?
In Australia?
In Sydney, yeah.
In Sydney, around more than 20 years.
Okay. And over the course of your time living in Sydney, do you think the cultural background of Chatswood has kind of changed? Has it primarily been Asian for those past 20 years, or is Asian populating just starting to?
I think there's nothing changed since then. Only there's so many, Asian it's getting growing,
What sort of languages do you hear around the place?
I think here we're using our own language because most of our customers are Filipino, so we're talking Tagalog. That's our language. Yeah.
Is this all?
The notices you have here, it seems like a bit of a community kind of notice board. where people-
This one mostly, are Filipino.
Is there a big Filipino community in Chatswood?
Not
really?
No, not really. The big one somewhere in Blacktown, yeah, and also one in DY.
While census data tells us the number of residents that are of a different ethnic background and what languages are spoken at home, it does not necessarily reflect the linguistic landscape, the languages spoken in public, and how they interact. Instead, this linguistic landscape is evident in the shops and their linguistic choices. People's perceptions of the prominence of different languages is potentially high subjective, although despite representing different languages and ethnic groups, those interviewed shared the same opinion that Chinese people were dominant. And as such, Cantonese and Mandarin were the top languages other than English. This is in line with the census data. However, what is lacking from the people's perceptions are the smaller groups, namely the Japanese and Korean people in Chatswood. People's experiences determine the perceptions of the linguistic makeup of this area, so those working with Chinese people appear to only really count Chinese and Westerners as primary groups, whereas those with a different client base, such as the Filipino lady who catered to many Filipino customers, was more aware of variety in the ethnic and linguistic landscape, even though she too could recognize the dominant groups.